So I'm going to start with this. I was just doing a little bit of research on your background, your time on your website, and noticed you have 8 grandchildren.
Actually, I'm up to 10 now.
Oh, my goodness gracious. So that even more so then, Matt, tell us your secret. How does one look so young and have 10 grandchildren? Walk me through, man. That normally doesn't go together.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure about the appearance and all of that, but I can tell you that, it is a part of the heart. And I've got 4 great, wonderful daughters who are all married now and having children. And so my wife and I have just been enjoying all of that. And, God has really given us a great blessing in this family that keeps extending. And maybe that's the key, is that just an extended family that is of the same faith and is unified together, very committed to what we're doing here on this earth. And we're just enjoying that.
And I love that big vision of the unity there. I want to pick your brain a little bit. I grew up in a small Christian school. My wife runs a school here in Colorado where we live. We just had a big Shakespeare performance last night by the whole high school. That was a lot of fun. Matt, as you think about this, and you've done 13 years now in leadership by my calculation, why don't you start with a couple of the things? What has helped your team to be successful? I realize it's a whole team to make that work, but we live in a time I want to talk specifically operations, where we've got tight budgets. We've got a lot to get done and a big vision. How do you bring that all together? How do you bring the idea of finances together and vision for the school together? Start talking to us about some of that big picture that you bring together there.
Well, this isn't necessarily the greatest start to this, because I'd love for it to be maybe a little bit more of a positive platform. But in this sense, my experience for the last 13 years goes back to the year 2013, when I arrived at this Christian school and began to learn some things very quickly, that we were not in a good position. Frankly, we were in the hole and badly in the hole. So I maybe will start with this. There's nothing like crisis to bring people together or, of course, destroy the whole thing. Yeah. So there was an element that I felt like I arrived at a moment at this school after many years prior in other school experiences, suddenly faced with a very harsh reality that we have got to grab a hold of things. And I was very blessed to have a group of people who were already here, already committed. They were bonded together. And so I did not find a group that was resistant, just kind of faltering in that way. And so that was, I just have to give you that part of my story. It was a crisis situation. And here in Chattanooga, it wasn't looking good. And that kind of galvanized a bit of a group energy to say, well, are we going to grab a hold of this thing or not?
That's helpful. And I think actually it is a blessing to a lot of people who will be on here. I talk to a lot of administrators, leaders who are coming into a nonprofit under similar circumstances. So I think we've got a lot to learn from your experience there.
So maybe, that. Yeah. I can extend on that a little bit in the sense that
Please do.
We were, the enrollment had been in a steep decline for about 5 years. We were in the red. We were using a line of credit extensively. Our church was very gracious, that was governing our Christian school and was basically sharing their reserves with us to keep it going, which is awesome. That doesn't always happen. Often a church just cuts it, says we're done. That did not happen at Grace. Morale was low. Trust was low. I think the people that were in governance, while they were sharing and supporting, I really began to pick up in the first year or year and a half that they had lost confidence, and they were just praying and hoping that somehow this could get turned around, but they weren't sure anymore. And so that really created a sense that we needed to, in a sense, we needed to prove ourselves, not so much to anybody to make ourselves look good, but because things had to be done and there were hard decisions that had to be made, and we had to start making some changes, and they weren't going to be easy. So that began to happen, and in those first few years, it was daunting. We had to really think about people. We had to think about the whole marketing side that had been very weak. So we had to actually start trying to sell ourselves in the area because the assumptions of the past. And by the way, this was a Christian school that had been in existence for 30 years.
Wow.
So
Okay.
we now have just passed the 40-year mark, and
Wow.
so that we had to really think about those things of saying we've got to turn this thing around because it's really been declining in that way. So that's part of that morale, that trust, that lack of confidence. And I do remember this again as a little bit. I'm not sure I'd like to encourage people this way, but in a healthy way, we began to act a little bit like we were desperate.
Okay.
That doesn't sound exactly like the most faith-oriented person, say, I'm desperate. But privately, of course, that was not publicly announced anywhere. But we kind of had to face the reality that, hey, we're in a desperate situation. If you've heard of a shoestring budget, well, we don't even have shoestrings. If you're like, well, we got to tighten our belts. Yeah, well, I wish I had a belt.
We had a belt. Yeah.
It may sound a little humorous in the moment now, but that was not very fun at the time. Now, we are very thankful to see reserves built now. We've been operating on a budget with a 5% margin every year for several years.
Wow.
And we hit 2020, and if I could just ramp up the drama a little bit, we had our entire campus destroyed by a tornado.
What happened? Walk us through that. Wow.
On Easter Sunday night, about 11:30, an E3 tornado ripped through our area and absolutely decimated our campus on about 20 acres, 14 buildings. Could not be recovered. One building was able to be recovered of our ministry, and that was our children's center, our daycare.
Wow.
But of course, that took, I got to say, that took us about 8 months to get that refurbished and remodeled because of the damage to it. But everything else had to go to the ground.
Goodness.
And if you look at the pictures, there's some spots on our website, you'll see that it was just a terrible tragedy. It was very difficult at that moment to think of all the work that had been done in the previous years, that we felt we were doing the right thing. We knew that we had to do some capital improvements. We had just started a campaign that was called Gateways to Grace, and we were going to try to really give a facelift to the place, and God destroyed it. That may sound funny to some viewers, but we believe that God basically was indicating, you guys are doing a great job, but you need to start over as a facility, as a campus. So we have now been in a temporary home about 2 miles away, a church, another church, not our own church. Our own church had to find its own facility as well.
Right.
But another church took in the school and embraced the entire school. And this church has been incredible during this time of being disrupted and basically taken out of our place. We're rebuilding. Construction going on right now. We went through an entire process with FEMA.
Okay.
Our insurance was not adequate. And FEMA comes in and does support faith-based organizations now. And but it's not easy. Talk about red tape and procedures of the last 6 years. Unbelievable. But we have received funds, and they are in process, and we're able to rebuild. And it's going to be a beautiful campus. It's already underway. So in the midst of all of this operations, I can't tell you of a more dramatic disruption, starting all the way back with a decline to then a total destruction of your campus. So yeah, there's a little more for you.
That's helpful, Matt. It brings to mind this kind of idea on leadership at all levels, but I think it's harder in the nonprofit space. And it's the idea of resolved limitation, or what do we focus on so that we can do it well? Every business has to do that well. Every life actually has to do that well. We can only do some things. And the more things we do, the less we can do well. Where I find that to be a challenge in the nonprofit space is we're very heart-led many times. We see so many needs, we're driven by that. So it's really hard to say no to a need. But it sounds like you've actually had some circumstances where you've been forced to say no, maybe even more so than you would have had the ability to if there wasn't quite such a crisis in these areas. Walk us through that. How do you think about the things you say no to?
Yes. Well, one of the things, of course, like you just said, when you're forced to do it, you don't really, in that sense, take any personal credit because, it wasn't something I can pat myself on the back of. What a great heart I had to say no. I would like to have said that, and I believe that that can be done. And perhaps I've learned some things over time. One of our little themes of the last few years has been to have a mobile, minimalist mindset.
Okay. Minimalist is right there saying no. Talk to us about that. Yeah.
That's right. And it's saying, we are going to live in a sense that goes, hey, we don't have everything that we once had. We don't have everything that we would like to have. So we've got to function with what we have, and we need to be good stewards of those little things. And there's a little biblical principle there that Jesus taught about being faithful in that which is small. God has blessed us with an increasing enrollment during this time. We've actually gone from 400 students to almost 550. And there's a lot of circumstances that go into that.
That's K through 12?
Yes.
K through 12, 550. Wow, what a treat.
Yeah. So I would say that a couple of things that I was reflecting on of saying no or controlling is really initially, I think an executive leader, upon recognizing their situation, has got to admit that while it's all about people, it's all about the heart, you cannot lose sight of nor grasp on the numbers. And I'm afraid that that is often a mistake, that good-hearted people who love God, who love people, don't pay attention to the numbers. And by numbers in a school setting, I'm referring to students and revenue or budget. And so, that comes together. You've got to think about your numbers, and you got to think about your dollars. And some of us aren't wired that way. And we are that. I like how you said that, more of a heart person. That better mean you get some people around you that are really going to crunch the numbers and analyze them, and also recognize what procedures could be more efficient. You're wasting money in those areas of your operations. Let's not just curtail it because we don't have money, but let's do a better job of being efficient. And those are some lessons we've really learned even recently.
Yeah, Matt, that's really helpful. Talk to us, if you don't mind, a little bit about how you think about efficiency. Right, I work at a technology company, and technology is this. I've got a love-hate relationship with it. Right, every technology out there says it's going to make our lives easier. I can tell you for a fact, some of them do. Our dishwasher hasn't worked for the last 2 weeks, and I miss it. There are probably some technologies in my life that I would not miss if it were gone. How do you think about technology, people, and process within that idea of efficiency in your school?
Yeah. Wow, that's really good. Effectiveness is about doing the right things. Efficiency is about doing things right. And so I'll start with that.
Unpack that for us. Yeah, unpack that.
I feel like you do have to have already chosen that this is the right thing to do. And I'm not talking about a procedure or a process. I'm talking about the big picture, your mission, your purpose. Yeah. I think that the next thing you've got to have is that we're going to do things right. We're going to do them the right way, and we're going to do them well. And I will say that has to do with people. That you do need people who are committed to that. They are not sloppy. They're not undisciplined. There are people who are diligent, who are hard workers, who recognize the circumstances you're in. And I mentioned desperation, that they say, I get it, and I will act like we're desperate. I will work that hard. I will make sure that I have the very best way to do it. So it is a people thing in the core. I love getting people who can analyze our processes and how we're doing things and say, we could do that better. We had that recently. We recognized that we were still using paper for so much of our processing of our payments and getting approvals. Now, in those early years I was referring to, there was so much control over how we spent our money. I mean, everything had to have my signature on it. I mean,
Okay.
everything.
Everything. Wow. Okay.
And when I first experienced it, I thought this is ridiculous. And in a healthy environment, that is ridiculous. But I had to start to recognize, well, we're not normal. We're in bad shape. And so the governing authorities for our group are saying, you are the guy who's got to make sure it's all done. Well, it actually turned out well at that time. But as we grew and as we became more healthy, we began to realize, okay, I do not need to be signing every purchase order. And I grabbed a hold of the budget. I grabbed a hold of everything and became a rather obsessive student of what all was being spent and how it's going to be spent. But eventually, I needed to share that with my administrators. So our team of administrators began to take control of their budgets. Recently, we began to use a technology where, I mean, let me give you this example before I go to that. We had a total, I think, of 3 credit cards for the entire organization.
Wow. Okay. So high control.
Oh, man. I mean, it was tough to find one of those 3.
That's
and,
exactly.
nobody was allowed to use them. And so, I mean, it was, whew, you talk about intense. But there comes with that a lot of frustration. Oh, my goodness, that's not efficient.
So high control, but maybe low, agility or low team empowerment.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. As we began to rebuild trust and show that, hey, our people are trustworthy, we're making good decisions. And I admit that it did take us a while to do that. We then were beginning to look for how we could say that, hey, this administrator helped me build their budget. They need to have the authority to approve expenditures, and they need to actually have a credit card. Oh my goodness. You're going to let them have a credit card? Yes, we are. They deserve to have one. They've proven themselves over and over again. And so we went into this technology that allowed us to have a platform where credit cards were still managed and controlled online digitally to be able to view all of that. But they were able to have a card for themselves, limited to their budget, to what they were responsible for.
I love that. Well, I kind of like that because I'm part of that technology. I hope, unless you're talking about one of my competitors here, Matt.
Well, we're talking about KleerCard, and I don't have any problem talking about it by name, but KleerCard absolutely just changed the game for us in the last few months, really. And our administrators are absolutely loving it. They are able to make purchases within the context of their department, their area. We've reduced the red tape, all of those papers. I mean, I think we had 3 different forms, each of a different color. Oh, how creative that was.
Color coding. Okay.
Color coding our paper. I mean, at least Staples and Office Max got to use, sell us a lot of colored paper. But that's now ended. Sorry to them. But, everything under that control. And the second thing that we were able to do, along with those KleerCard credit cards now being issued to every one of these key people, and we could talk more about that system, but there's protections in place because you can only load it to a certain amount. There's an authority to who can load how much, but you can do that all online and so much more efficiently than having to go through a meeting and get approvals and fill out forms and get them all signed by maybe 3 or 4 different people. So that was a big game changer for us. Another element was our accounting software. We had not even given access. I mean, this is a little bit embarrassing because I think we should have done it a long time ago, but they didn't even have access to see their budgets and how things are being spent. But here's what the admiration is. In spite of us limiting that, and I don't have any good reason for it, we just did. They had their own spreadsheets and they kept track of everything themselves.
Okay.
So admirable. when
So
we
like a proactive approach to their own accountability,
yeah,
their own management, their own stewardship. Yeah.
that's right. They were doing it all on their own Excel spreadsheets. When it really, this light bulb moment, like, hey, you could give limited permissions for them to get into the accounting, not to edit, not to change anything, but they could read only. Oh my goodness, you don't have to wait for the accounting office to give you a report to check your report and match those up. So that was a second thing that just in the recent months, years, that we did alongside with that CleerCard initiation.
I love that super practical approach and how your mind goes to saying no to just about anything, as we've chatted about for a little bit here, is really about resources, time, energy, money that we have to go on that. And so it sounds like bringing together the ability of what we say yes to together with those resources and actually expecting that from our team is a very logical way to empower stewardship. But it does take high trust.
Yes, absolutely. And when you recognize that we had moved to them helping me to build the budget for each of these areas, and I'm still very involved in building an entire segment myself, but I basically looked to, I guess it's 7 different administrators who have a segment of our total $8 million budget. And they have responsibility for that in the sense of helping me to assign at the beginning of a fiscal year, here's how much we're going to spend, or we need to spend by categories. Well, they need to have the empowerment to enforce it. In the past, of course, as I already described, I felt like I was the enforcer of everything. And I didn't let that go to my head. Instead, we're recognizing that, hey, all of these administrators, I basically said, look, you gave us a number. I agree with you on it. And now we have a whole year. You need to make it happen. And they come to me if something's not going right. We're going to talk about it very consistently and very frequently that, hey, this line is not going as well as we thought. And it looks like we're going to go over budget. Okay, well, let's find a budget line to just make sure we're going under budget. It'd be one of the practical ways of looking at that. So, it's, again, all about the mission and what we're trying to accomplish. But I have become so convicted that the detail and the attention to detail is so important, or your mission is going to fail. And this school was on the verge. And we have to say that it was that close. And until we all began to grapple with those realities of the little numbers and all those elements add up to either success or failure. That makes a difference.
So I'd love to wrap up with this if you're game. I've got this theme here that I've heard in the way you describe it. And I love this consistency where you talked about the importance of desperation early on. Moving all the way through to the importance of attention to detail, right? But desperation is a way that forces us to stay focused on those details that matter. And yet it sounds like you're not quite as desperate anymore. Matt, talk to me about going forward. How do you keep the healthy side of desperation to stay focused on the mission going forward?
Then I think we're going to move to another concept, a character quality, and it's discipline.
Okay. Walk us through that. Unpack that for us a little bit as we wrap up.
I think you can play it all the way through from desperation to discipline, as you were describing there. But you recognize that the way we acted when we were desperate needs to continue with a different emotion, a different feeling about it all. Desperation tends to sound like a very distraught person.
And it can burn you out, right? If you live in that too long, you're burnt out.
Oh, the frazzled edge, I can barely hold on. We by the way, I want to make sure I'm strong about the fact that we did not talk to each other with desperation. We didn't have that emotion. We did not allow that. We just said we're going to act like we're desperate, but we're going to trust God above all. And we're not going to, just be in that screeching, screaming emotion. So there was a confidence that we were going to do everything we could at that level. Well, as you said, when you begin to recognize things are going well, hey, we've got things in order, then we really have to have unity and agreement that we're not going to stop. we're going to continue to do things right.
Yeah.
Don't stop doing things right. You know what you're going after. You've seen the motivation in the past. Now comes the motivation that is solely, first of all, we don't want to go back there. But secondly, we see that we can do so much more. There's so much more effectiveness happening. Let's rejoice in that. Let's celebrate that. And let's continue to be disciplined in our behavior day after day.
Man, Matt, I love that. And speaking of being disciplined, we're going to be disciplined and honor your time and honor our listeners' time and wrap it up. I think that's a fantastic way to wrap it up. Matt, thank you for taking time with us, and best of luck as you continue to lead your organization.
Thank you. I really appreciate this time with you and be happy to talk with you again. We love KleerCard, and what that has done for us has been such a game changer. And so further interactions as we keep growing and keep learning. Owen, you've been a great support to us.
What a blessing. All right, brother. Best wishes as you wrap up the school year. I know how busy things are right now, and thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll see you, Owen.
Cheers.